Hello, Star Trek Adventures world. I'm Michael Dismuke. I'm a freelance writer for Star Trek Adventures, in addition to being a blogger on continuing missions, and of course, a host of this Continuing Conversations, where we talk everything about Star Trek Adventures. We talk about the game, we talk about the mechanics, we talk about the writers, the artists, and of course, one of my favorite things to talk about is our fans who have done so much to push this game today. Before we bring in our guest star for today and introduce him, and I guarantee you most likely know him, and you don't know you know him, we're going to first let Jim Johnson introduce himself.
Hey, everybody, Jim Johnson. I am the project manager and line editor for the Star Trek Adventures role-playing game published by Modiphius Entertainment, and the co-host of this here show, which last I heard Michael was hitting the charts somewhere along the way. I didn't hear all the details on that, but top 100 something ish of
within the top 200, within the top 200 of hobbies and games. Yeah, within the top 200 of hobbies and games on iTunes. Woo! So 169, I don't know what that means, Jim. Everybody who asked, including John today, when I told him, he was like, well, yeah, but out of how many? So maybe it's out of 169. I don't know, but I'm 169. I'll take it because I didn't even expect to get on the chart.
Yeah, I got it.
Now, I know me and Jim, by the time this gets aired in a couple weeks, but I know this week, myself and Jim are coming off of Fleet Week, the partnership that we had with STO, Star Trek Online, and Streampunks. And Jim, how are you feeling about how that went this week, Fleet Week?
Oh, I think it went great. I think we got the numbers. They had like 250 something people like throughout the day, but over 1,000 unique people that came into it all throughout the 6 or 7 events. So I think it was a huge success. I just love listening. I mean, I enjoyed our panel, but I enjoyed more listening to all the other panels and all the different talent that they had on those discussions. It was just amazing that the people they were able to bring in, like, Rick Sternbach and Dr. Aaron McDonald, and it's just so many people. It was just amazing to see all these voices from Star Trek, past and present, right, and future, presumably. So I had a blast. It was great. It was great to connect with the fans and just chat on the chat window throughout the day. It was a lot of fun. What did you think of it?
Well, my top 2 things were, one, the panel on the science of Star Trek, and having actually these professors and scientists there who consult on the show and have consulted for 30 years, being able to pick their brains and hear their side of it was great. What I also liked was seeing in the chat, and even after Fleet Week, how many people who play Star Trek Online said they're going to try Star Trek Adventures out now, because of the panel we did, but even the panel afterwards, Streampunks, which was a super fun watch. So just happen to know people are getting in the game. What we're here to talk about today is someone who actually was an early adopter of the game. And many of you might not know the person's name, but I bet you that if you're on the Discord server, or if you've been perusing around continuing missions for 4 or 5 years, you may have heard about the bot called Majel. Whoa, I just pulled a Paul Ye.
Majel, right?
Thank you. It's Majel.
Okay.
And that bot was a miracle to our game. We're going to get into that story, but first, before we introduce anything about the technology, we have to talk about the person behind the technology, and we're going to talk about the evolution of it, and if you haven't used it, why you could be using it. So let's introduce John Nguyen. Welcome, John Nguyen, to Continuing Conversations.
Hi, everyone. I'm the creator and maintainer of Majel, the Discord bot. I also have another bot. It's sort of related. It's S2E50, which is a spinoff of Majel as well. So I've been maintaining both of those bots since 2019.
Yeah, I think so. Late 18, 19 probably. For those who don't know, because I always want to respect that. I always say I'm the average fan, and I'm not, I'm a geek. I'm the average geek, but I'm not big on tech. Talk to us. What is a bot, John?
So a bot is basically just an automated series of instructions. You send it some input, and if it recognizes the input, it does some processing, and then there's an output.
There we go. So
it's as simple as that.
in Star Trek terms, that'd be like an algorithm or a subroutine, right?
More or less, yeah.
Okay, good. Now we're all in the same spot. So for all of you want to know the history is back in 2017, 2018, this is when Star Trek Adventures was really rolling out and social media forums were beginning. Now, I jumped onto Reddit early on, and I also jumped onto Facebook. So Facebook had a Star Trek Adventures RPG forum, a Star Trek Adventures Game Master forum. And that's where people like me who didn't really have the time to get a regular table group together, old school tabletop, I started looking for online playing. Now, I had been doing online playing for over 20 years because my friends had moved to Germany, San Diego, Idaho, all over the world, and we were playing a different RPG at the time. So I was very comfortable with it, but I needed a group for Star Trek Adventures. And that's where I met John, and I said, hey, I'm going to be starting up a campaign. I put an advertisement out there on our what was a new blog, Continuing Missions at that time. And John answered the call. And John, why don't you tell us a little bit about the character, if you recall, that you had decided to play at that time?
Okay, so my character was named Gorana Dutrex. She was a Betazoid, but that specialized in security. She wanted to get into combat versus doing the traditional roles as a Betazoid, which is more like the diplomatic side of it.
That's right. And when we could go on for days about where that story ended up, because we played 2 seasons, which was 26 episodes, modules of that character. And John had to, because of time and different responsibilities, jump out. We're in season 5 now, but that character left a big legacy. Talking about legacies, John, why don't you tell us a little bit how you got into Star Trek in the first place? Like, tell us that Star Trek story.
I mean, it started when I was a kid. I saw it on TV, and like it just hooked me. I don't know like how to explain it. Like it was just the show's on TV, and I started watching it, and I actually grew like I love the show, and I just been a huge fan ever since. And it was started off with TNG, and that's been my start to my my Star Trek like fandom.
Okay, good.
And I've been watching the other show that came after it. So like Deep Space Nine, Voyager. Not so much Enterprise. I'm still trying to work through it. I still haven't quite been hooked. Mm-hmm. Even now, I'm still kind of like I'm trying my best to get through all the lore and all the stories. But man, it's a tough show.
Yeah. Don't start it at 10 o'clock at night. That's my advice. Wait until you have a good like leg break and you're laid up and you need to binge watch something, maybe something like that. Okay, so I always have to ask the Star Trek fans the 2 questions: favorite show and now your favorite character.
TNG.
Okay.
Favorite character would probably be Worf.
Oh,
he plays such a serious character for most of the series. Every once in a while they introduce a bit of comedy, and it's like the hardest like belly laugh I've had whenever they introduce a little bit of a comedic element to his character.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like they're going to do that again in Picard season 3. Did you get a chance to catch the trailer?
I saw the trailer. I'm so excited. A pacifist? What? The warrior?
Yeah, I'll be curious to see if they keep it as an actual character thing or if they're just going to use it as a joke. I'm hoping they don't make it a joke. I hope it's a real thing.
I'm going to like flip my shit if he dons the Robin Hood costume.
That would be great, Jim. I mean, thinking about that, like such a big character transition, that's going to require a whole new write-up for this character at some point, right?
Maybe. I mean, we'll have to see, right? I mean, we really don't know right now, but certainly the values would change, values and focuses, if nothing else. I don't know if like the numbers are going to change all that much, because that's just the nature of STA, is that statistically your characters don't change a lot.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Will the rules change if you're in the holodeck?
Well, do they? Could you change your values in the holodeck? Is that what you're saying? Like acting out of character?
Yeah. So you're in a fantasy world, more or less, right? And then so I would assume that your usual stats can be like altered just for the sake of like acting out the holodeck experience.
Jim, we've done like almost a year's worth of shows and no one's ever come up with that question before. Do people's values, can their attributes, disciplines, and values change in the holodeck? That's a mechanic we've never wrote.
Just for the sake of the holodeck.
Well, the person's not changing, right? The program is changing to suit what the character wants to do. So, I mean, I think your character's values could change based on the experiences that you have in the holodeck, but I don't think your character's personal stats would change at all. I think the universe would shape itself to you, so that you're like if you want to get into a like Barclay, right? His program made sure he was the best and the coolest and the most awesome in all those sword fights. It wasn't Barclay getting better; it was everybody else in the program being worse, right? Just by default. And so that's how I as a GM would approach it, right? Is that the program would tailor itself to suit the character, and the character themselves would not change like statistically. However, like I said though, if something profound happened in the holodeck, I could see a character changing their values or even focuses based on those experiences, right? And I'd have to think of like an example, maybe Data after he encounters Moriarty and realizes that the computer can create an opponent for him that can defeat him. That might have an impact on Data's values, because maybe not that Data was necessarily, but like if Data kind of like had in the back of his positronic mind that he was undefeatable, right? Or could not be defeated, and then he faces off against Moriarty, which was a computer generated program. Basically, he's like, oh well, that has an impact, right?
Or how about when Tuvok had to use the holodeck for Pon Farr?
Oh,
yeah, maybe.
That's a change of values. Because remember, he was like, "Is this cheating on my wife?"
Yeah, and certainly I'm not as well versed in Voyager as you are, Michael, but I'm sure the Doctor had any number of experiences in the holodeck that impacted him in a unique way, because he's a holographic character, right? So I'm sure there were some elements there that you could certainly play with.
John, I think you inspired a module. I mean, this is something I've never talked about before, and this is where you could really make a holodeck adventure quite provocative. Okay.
Absolutely.
As you can all see, John is a whiz, not only at just thinking and knowing about the construct of the game, but let's get into the bot a little bit. So, John, we were playing, for whatever, maybe a couple months or something, and all of a sudden you blessed us one day with this bot. Talk to us a little bit about it and what your motivation was for creating Majel.
Okay.
Was it because you were so irritated at our dice rolls, or what?
I was very hungover on a lot of those sessions. So being able to like to count and do math while you're hungover is a little annoying. I don't know. I don't know if you would agree with me, but doing math while you're hungover, not a great experience.
Okay, I love the raw honesty. That is such a good response.
So I decided, like, all right, well, let's see if you can I can improve on the bot we already had, which is it was doing just raw numbers. But I thought we should do something a little more meaningful. Maybe show some like what each of the numbers mean, like basically interpreting all the roles, and maybe put like a nice like little like interface along with it. So it's a nice presented package to the player.
Yeah, for those of you who haven't seen it yet, some of the things it does for you, in addition to just rolling dice, because many of us are familiar with, dice rollers. D&D had them for years, these dice generators. But what he did is he actually embedded, for instance, if you forgot how to do a sensor sweep, you could hit a function, type in ship sensor sweep, and it tells you how to roll a sensor sweep. So you know exactly which attributes and discipline you need to put together with your character. And as it evolved, and we'll talk about its evolution to the point it is today, as it evolved, it could even let you decide what your critical number is. So for those of you who aren't familiar, if you have a focus and you have a discipline number of say 3, if you roll 1, 2, or 3, it's determined as a critical success worth 2 successes. So there was some functionality built in so that people, as he said, wouldn't have to do drunk math, and they could go ahead and just have all the answers at the fingertips. And it was a huge blessing. And I got to ask, how much time did it take you to design, say, let's call it the first generation of Majel?
So I do things. iteratively.
Mm-hmm. Iteratively. Put the drink away. You do things in steps. You do things in steps.
Sorry, I had a few vodkas before this interview.
Iteratively, right? Yeah.
Iteratively, yeah. So it's maybe a few hours at a time, and just enough to see I see the feature come to fruition, or if there's any bugs, it's all fixed, and then I basically deploy it and for the players to like try it out, and hopefully there's no complaints.
Yeah, and it worked well. I don't remember. I mean, very rarely is there a bug or a drop or something like that in it. Now, it's evolved since that time to a current state. And for those of you who are watching, you'll be happy to know I'm a very visual learner, and John is going to be putting together some little tutorial videos that you'll be seeing on Continuing Mission, and we'll be pumping them out where it shows you how to use the bot. So it's not just enough to go in there and just play around with it, which I've done and figured out. I love visuals. So talk to us about this recent evolution, which has been, to me, mind-blowing. But John, what are some of the features that you think people should know about?
Oh, first and foremost, this was this new change was pushed out by Discord, and it caused a lot of headache for a lot of us bot developers and bot maintainers, all for the sake of like security and privacy. So I understand where they're coming from, but from my end, it was a pain in the ass to migrate from the old system to the new one. It took me about a month on and off, listening to the community feedback, all the complaints, and all the bug reports, and make sure everything's ironed out. We're in a good state now. So one of the biggest changes you'll see, it's a more visual approach to inputting the commands. Before it was like exclamation point, the command name, and a whole bunch of like parameters. And now it'll give you like a sort of a visually guided way to input what you want into the command. So for instance, the D20, the very minimal thing that you have to provide is the
at that time was a exclamation mark.
The target value. That's the minimum thing you need to provide to the D20. And then you can also optionally add the critical, the complications, and things like that. But it's done in a visual way.
Mm-hmm. Can I explain? There's a word that I'd like to add is prompts.
Yes.
The previous one, for everyone knows, you had to kind of type in this little code to get it to roll 2, 3, 4 D20 with your critical of 19 or your critical of 3 and complication range of 19. Now, the minute you type in the dice, D/D20, it prompts you and asks you the question: what's your comp range? What's your critical range? How many dice do you want to throw? Which is so great again, John. So I thought that was those prompts are key.
You appreciate it, but a lot of folks want the old way, like the more like text-based way. It's just the way that they're used to, or they like how like just quickly they can just enter in all the information. So Majel also supports the old way of inputting the dice rolls as well.
Oh, wow. So I didn't know that. I didn't know it does both. Okay, fantastic. So, all right. Well, like Jim says, infinite diversity, infinite combinations. You're taking care of the originalists. That's a callback to Star Trek Year 5 and the current people. What other cool features that you think we should know about,
John? So I've added more icons to the results of the roll. So it's a much more visual representation of the dice roll results. I wanted to explore some more like presenting the user with like a series of buttons and whatnot, and have them be able to click on it. There's some of that, but it's not completely stable at the moment.
So you just want to get to okay.
Yeah, I would like to explore more towards the visual aspect of doing these commands. And there's a lot of it available there too, but I'm trying to figure out what's feasible, what's going to work for the users, and hope it doesn't crash the servers.
Right.
And yeah, so far there's a few cases where a Majel can go down if you do the wrong thing with the commands.
Yeah. Now this is mind blowing to me, Jim. I got to get your take on this. This is a service of love from John. He started playing the game, and you've been seeing a lot of this kind of fan service for the game. I mean, I know you started as line editor for Modifius, and then you became the project manager 3.5 years ago now, or something around there.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. What's your take on this? Like, what do you think when you're seeing the fans do stuff like this, whether it's what John's doing or other, people putting up streaming, stuff like that?
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's what fans have been doing from day one of RPGs, right? I think even way back when D&D first came out, there were people creating their own systems, their own rules, their own worlds, et cetera, et cetera. And I think almost immediately when the first RPG was published, right, immediately people were coming up with quote unquote better character sheets and better better tools and stuff. Because I don't think there's a role-playing game that's been published by anybody where the character sheet worked for the vast majority of the player base, right? There's always, like, it feels to me like, I mean, I've been freelancing in the industry for 20 odd years now, and I can't remember a single game that got published where there wasn't a fan character sheet coming out like within a couple of days, right? Because I don't think fans are ever happy about what the companies come up with, right? So there's always something new, and there's always been healthy fan bases for games. I mean, I can remember even Twilight 2000 and Marvel Superheroes. Like, I mean, even before there was an internet, and this is dating me, but that's just the way it is. Like, even before the internet, we were coming up with our own homebrew character sheets to the one that in the book didn't quite work, so we'll move this over here and we'll move this over here. And I think as technology has come into the picture, smart people like John are able to program their own stuff and program their own apps even before they were called apps, right? I mean, I remember CompuServe and PlayNet and some of those ancient systems, even before still mostly before the internet or when the internet was just becoming a thing, right? People were creating their own GUIs and interfaces and systems and programming their own bots and stuff. And I think this is just an evolution of that, right? I think we see that now, especially with the virtual tabletops that are out there. You've got Roll and Fantasy Grounds and Roll20, and there's so many different platforms now. And not only are there platforms now, but then there's also stuff like Majel that you can program and then just plug into whatever Discord server you happen to be on, and it still works. And I think that's fascinating because I'm not that technologically savvy. But I understand what it means to program an app and then be able to load that app into multiple different platforms and stuff. And that's always been fan driven as far as I can remember. And it's like, other than Wizards of the Coast and maybe Paizo, there aren't that many companies that can fund their own systems like this, right? Like these apps and stuff. And even then, like I was saying before with the character sheets, right? A company may create one, and it's still not going to be good enough for a lot of the fans. They're going to go create their own anyway. And I think at this point with technology, like so many people know how to program and know how to use technology and create, graphical interfaces and, WYSIWYG interfaces and apps like this that I think, as the project manager, I'm blessed because I know there's such a huge fan base that loves this game and loves Star Trek and makes this stuff just out of the love of it, right? And I can't thank the fans enough for doing that because Majel has made so many other gamers' lives easier playing this game, and it has made the game more accessible for them. And like you can't put a value on that because that makes the game so much better, right? It's like the same thing, Michael. I'm not going to blow smoke up your butt, but the fact that we had continuing mission available so early in the life of the game. Right. I mean, if I think about we're only 6 years into it, so it's kind of ridiculous to think about the heritage and the history of Star Trek Adventures. But like Star Trek Adventures came out, we had Shield of Tomorrow, Continuing Mission, and Majel all within like a couple of years of each other. And that foundation really, really helped Star Trek Adventures in ways that I've never seen a Star Trek RPG get help before. Right. Like, I mean, Decipher had some help. With online stuff like some forums and a couple of folks that were doing fan-made newsletters, which was awesome. But like of course we had a 14-year gap between Star Trek RPGs anyway, right? There was nobody doing a Star Trek RPG. But I think Star Trek Adventures just got super lucky on the timing that we were able to have all this support. We had Shielded Tomorrow on Twitch, I think, right, or YouTube. Don't remember which one. Then you came out with your blog, and you had all that great content and all the content contributors adding all that great STA content. And then John brought out Majel, and that just exploded with Discord and everything else. And it's just like we just kind of rode on your coattails, because I don't remember if we had any specific conversation about it at Modiphius, but like in my head somehow, like subconsciously, I knew that this game had a really great fan base of support that were going to continue to support it. And I mean, we see that now. There's so many folks out there making great content for the game, whether it's character sheets or ship sheets, and ship sheets that have specific ship silhouettes on them, right? Mm-hmm. So you can go get your own customized character or ship sheet. There's awesome, character graphic token creators. There's, of course, Majel. There's just so much stuff now that, in a way, like even if we stopped publishing tomorrow, this game would live on for a while. I mean, I don't know when or if it would die out, because Star Trek's evergreen.
It's immortal. There's also one other contributing factor. I want maybe John and Jim to talk about it a little bit. There was one other factor that really made the tech piece of this game take off, and that was in March 2020 when the pandemic hit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. I didn't realize how big Majel got until I got an email from Discord saying, "Hey, your bot, it's in over 100 servers. You should apply for the verified bot icon." Like,
wow,
what? Sure,
that's awesome.
Awesome. Yeah, and I go ahead, Jim. You want to talk about the pandemic?
No, I was actually gonna one of my questions for tonight was to ask John if he had any ability to track metrics as to like how many people downloaded it, how many people are using it, et cetera, or is it just something that you kind of like send out into the ether and then people use it or don't use it? I don't have any insight into that side of things. I
just send it out, and I don't care about the numbers until I get like emails such as from Discord. Security and privacy are still a major thing for me, so I want to make sure everything is anonymized for the time being. But it's not off the table at some point if I want to do some analytics. But for right now, everybody's information is private and it's anonymized.
Oh, no doubt on that. I wasn't asking for anything specific. It's just like in general, number wise, like, did you have any sense of how big it was? And it sounds like you got an email saying at least 100 servers are using it.
But that was 2 years ago, right?
That was 2 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And that was just at the start of the pandemic. So I'm confident it's increased since then.
Well, I was running a statistic today, just talking about like growth between pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. You know me, I love numbers, and I know Modiphius can't release certain numbers, but after doing an intense search online, I did find out that at least 8,322 Humble bundles were sold in a Star Trek Adventures campaign that ran from December 2021 to January 14th, 2022. And to me, that means you had 8,322 maybe new users. I know some people may have bought it just to have the whole electronic collection of PDFs maybe, but to me, that seemed like a pretty successful campaign. And then if even half of these want to play online and they come over to the Discord server, last time I checked in with the Discord server, I think there was over 2,000 or 2,500 users on the Discord server. And if they're going to be playing Star Trek Adventures online, which I know a lot of people do because I get a lot of questions about it, I'm guessing they're going to be using Majel because it is the most comprehensive tool. So to me, I think it was the factor that you mentioned before, Jim, about just the people, super fans. And then all of a sudden you end up with this worldwide crisis like the pandemic driving people away from the tabletops into the virtual tabletop environment.
Yeah. And Michael, this is a non sequitur, and I can't help it though, because I noticed. I know what you're talking about. That Humble bundle that we did in late 21 that sold like 8,300 copies, but the Humble bundle that we did in 2020 during the heavy part of the pandemic, that was well over 17,000.
Whoa.
And so between those two bundles, that was well over 24,000 bundles. And I have to think that at least some percentage of that are using or were using Majel on some Discord server somewhere, right? I mean, we sold a ridiculous number of those humble bundles back, a couple years ago, and then we just ran another one earlier this year, didn't we? I don't remember seeing the numbers on that one, but I know it's on the humble bundle site somewhere. I have to go look for it. So there's a huge number of people that have bought into the game and are using Majel to some extent. Because I was on a handful of SCA servers and they all had Majel, all of them.
See, John, hence why the server crashed. All your fault.
Maybe at some point in the next few days, I can probably get the actual numbers. What I do know is when I was debugging for the other dice bot, which is 2D20, it's like a generic 2D20 dice roller, for like Fallout or even the Star Trek Adventures. If you want the minimal most feature set, and there's already 300 servers using that bot, and that's like a unknown bot. I didn't really advertise that bot anywhere. So I can imagine the STA community, Majel is worried about that.
Yeah. And then we see things like expect another surge because after Fleet Week, there was a lot of attention and energy coming into the server. I saw, even my Twitter got more likes because, you do a pound. So I have to say, John, what an amazing thing that you were there at the right time to morph a piece of tech that Trekkies are able to use. And so, Jim, that's why I like picking your brain about it, trying to see as these waves come,
Yeah, absolutely.
So, John, I do want to. Oh, go ahead, John. Did you have something to add?
So I'm about to say, never underestimate the power of a mildly inconvenienced developer.
To trap you in a room, you'll develop new tech. Wow.
Inspiration comes from the most interesting places. I tell you, it's just amazing what people can do when they're in a certain place and a certain mindset or whatever, and you get magic, and it's just super cool to see.
Well, one of the things I like to do is make sure, anybody who comes on the show, we let them kind of plug themselves and talk about stuff. So we're going to repeat it twice. But John, right now, why don't you tell us, I know you have a Patreon. I know I support your Patreon, right? And I just want people to know that it is out there because John does provide this as a free service. But talk a little bit about your Patreon.
It's just there to keep the lights on. I'm not actively promoting it. If you find out about it and you're willing to throw in a couple bucks, I'm totally okay with that. I can definitely support Majel for the rest of to infinity or till I die, whatever.
Anyone curious? Go ahead.
Yeah, if you want, it's you can do search for Majel, the Discord bot, and that's my Patreon page. And if you're willing to support her, absolutely appreciate it. Otherwise, you have to. It's okay.
Yeah. I just like to tell people that I think coming in with that attitude is probably what makes people want to support it too. Is that we same thing. If anyone they ask me sometimes continuing missions, I make no money off it. I'm just a fan who doesn't want the game to die, so I'm trying to make it as easy and accessible as for everyone. Because I was there when Marvel TSR crashed, and I'm still not over it. So, So let's talk a little bit about the future. As we move forward, John, I'll tell everyone a little story here. So John had played in my game for 2 years. Again, life happens. And so he had to step off of our Discord campaign. But we decided that we had such a good time together that, hey, let's get together. In addition, he actually gave me his Borg cube. So I'm going to let everyone just drool for a second. I had not got the Borg cube when it was on. I came in late, and so it sold out. And John gave it to me for running the game for 2 years. And so, hug to John. Yes, more than that, I said, right. More than that, I had to take, I said, okay, you're in the Bay Area. And I said, let's meet. So we met at a whiskey bar in Los Gatos because I know he likes whiskey. And we had a great conversation that day over whiskey about the future of where technology might let us take Star Trek adventures. And one of the things we talked about is really using an Oculus or VR technology. So what's your dream, John? Where do you literally, you're in the tech industry. So in 5 to 10 years, what do you think are some of the things that are going to be possible with Star Trek adventures? Just riff off that conversation we had before.
So Oculus and the 3D, the VR goggle, that's more sort of like a visual representation. But I'm really more interested in automating all sort of the tedious work of playing an RPG like any RPG, right? Managing the inventory, the number crunching, and things like that, player sheets. I would at some point like to automate that, put into a tool, website, or control it via the bot. I don't know. So these are things I'm just sort of like pie in the sky, just wildly dreaming about. I don't have anything concrete to work on within the next quarter or whatever. But these are things I like to see. Just more of the nitty gritty stuff you do in a typical RPG, and just automate it, make it really nice, really easy for the user to like interact with. And
so let's talk even maybe not what you're able or have time to work on, but really from a dream state where technology is moving right now. Do you think in 10 years, that's the question. How close will we be to a holodeck? That's really the question, right? So do you think like in 10 years we'll be in spaces, green rooms? We see them on TV and commercials now where people are in these gallery rooms where maybe they'll be able to walk around, walk through a ship, have that functionality. I mean, do you think that's too soon, 10 years?
Too soon without the gear, right?
Correct.
But if you have, say, like the VR goggles, some specialized equipment, you can definitely have sort of the holodeck experience. But for the time being, it's still limited, regardless.
Yeah.
One of the sort of the research videos I've seen to sort of replicate, walk down a street like an infinite street, but then they're not walking an actual straight line. It's sort of curved. But and their like their goggles and their visual experience, it looks like they're going in a straight line. So there's some tricks to fool them to have these like boundaries extended, but we're never gonna have like an infinite, experience like the holodeck.
One could dream. Jim, what do you think? You see a lot happening out there. What do you think the best we can get in 10 years is in your dream state? You're on mute, Jim.
Sorry about that. I would be thinking about it from the angle of a game, right? Like what kind of technology are we going to get that would make the game experience even better? Whether it's virtual alternative to Zoom and Google Chat or Discord or like whatever the current platforms are. Because I think right now, like I think virtual gaming is a bigger thing than it's ever been, right? I think the pandemic helped with that. And I would love to see the next 10 years. I would love to see technology get to a point where it can overcome a lot of the bandwidth issues and like make it a super smooth experience. Like people can log into the game and have a great, smooth, super easy experience. And whether the game is combat heavy like certain RPGs, or if it's more theater of the mind and more like narrative and snappy and quick, like Star Trek Adventures can be. It doesn't have to be, but it can be. I'd love to see a platform that can like really do that well. And I know that competition is a good thing, and like we've got multiple different virtual tabletops out there right now. But I would love to see that continue to mature, over the next 10 years. And if it takes like some of the ideas from the holodeck or from VR goggles or something, sure, that's an option. But if I'm thinking about like getting together with my buddies around a table, virtual table, and playing Star Trek Adventures or some other game, what can developers do to make that a super easy, seamless experience so that I'm not having to struggle with the technology? Make it a tool that helps me and enables me to make an awesome game experience for my friends, and not we're lagging, so now we gotta wait. Oh, now the video's not working. Now we gotta deal with this, or our app isn't working and we can't figure out how to make the numbers. The math is all screwed up now. What happened? So I mean, in the next 10 years, I'm confident something's going to happen, because like you think about where we were 10 years ago, when I don't think there were really any, or not that many virtual tabletops, or it was a whole different, situation, right? And of course, Star Trek Adventures wasn't around 10 years ago, but we were moving in that direction. I think things have accelerated as technology does. And I'm just eager to see what happens next, specifically in a gaming state of mind. As far as entertainment and technology, man, I don't care. I mean, it's technology is moving so fast right now, and you just kind of try to keep up with it. I'm confident that my son, like he's 7 now, but in 10 years he's going to be totally on top of whatever technology is out there, and he's just going to blow me away, right? Like he's going to have some sort of device that I'm not going to know how to use, And that's okay, because that's where I was, when I was 17. Like I was using technology that my mom and dad were completely befuddled by, right? They still can't program their their VCR clock, so to speak, right? But so
Right.
that may be a half-assed answer to your question, Michael. But I'm kind of looking at it from the gaming perspective. Like I really want a good tabletop, virtual tabletop thing. And like I've seen good stuff about like the glass tables and the virtual tables and stuff. I think even that stuff is still a little too advanced for what we really wanted to do in terms of a game experience. But I mean, the potential's there. Like if somebody was willing to sink some cash into that, they could probably come up with something really cool. And so that you could play like any board game, like virtually around the world. Like I know, what is it? Not Fantasy Grounds, but tabletop simulator is pretty good. But even that's kind of wireframey choppy. Although I do love it for what it can do. But like that technology will continue to improve, I'm sure, because that's just what technology does.
Yeah. My dream, especially we had that interview with Thomas Maroney, the associate art director for Star Trek Online. My dream is that Star Trek Online, which is a massive multiplayer online RPG, could work with Star Trek Adventures so that you could take your ship out and do those energy action battles you need to do, but then you could zoom into the ship and bring your Star Trek Adventure players into it and play and walk around anywhere you want. And the schematics are detailed. I mean, I would love that I could take my players and say, hey, by the way, let's go over to a ship battle online now and let's join online. Wouldn't that be just, to me, I think that's probably the closest we might be able to get into 10 years, because we know there are, for instance, Voyager deck plans where you can walk around through the entire Voyager.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's starting to straddle the line a little bit, right? Where like, you could, each person could be in their house with the bodysuit on, right? With the sensors. And so you're walking around and your avatar is walking around on screen doing stuff. And I think that's kind of like straddling that line between role playing and LARPing, and virtual LARPing and stuff. And I mean, that may be 20, 30 years away. And, knock on wood, Star Trek Adventures will still be around, but who knows, right? I mean, by that point, I'll be old and gray, so I'll need to hand it off to somebody, I'm sure.
Well, they're already, and they even have the other Star Trek game. I can't remember the name of it right now, but you have the LCARS options where you're actually pushing buttons too.
Yeah.
So if it's true LCARS, then you could be an officer inside this ship, modify your LCARS panels, as we know LCARS lets you do, so that all the buttons are where you want them to be. And then all of a sudden, when a ship battle happens, we zoom out to the exterior and you're in Star Trek Online doing what you do best there. I mean, I that's where my mind goes. I think in 10 years, that's possible.
Yeah. But even then, Michael, I have to admit that as much as I love video games and virtual environments and that kind of stuff, there is still a limitation, right? That you can only do as much as the programmers can enable it to do. And the power of a tabletop RPG, of course, is that you are limited only by what you and your group can imagine, like, in your head, and then you just describe it to each other. So I think I worry, well, I don't really worry. I just wonder if we get to that level of technology, if maybe we'd be losing something about what makes tabletop gaming so cool, where you can do theater of the mind and just like imagine all these things that you can imagine that a system like a holodeck system couldn't do yet, because we're not in the 24th or 25th centuries just yet.
No, you're right. It's like the difference, I would say, between a stage play and a movie. I just had the privilege of being in Seattle and watching To Kill a Mockingbird on stage. Amazing cast and crew there. And even though I had seen the movie, watching the stage play, you pick up so much more. Yeah. And I think that's the difference between RPG and a video game, maybe in the same frame, right? Yeah. So true. All right. So John, one of the things we like to do in going out is we like to say thank yous and give some gratitude. We like to then, go around. You can shout out your favorite game shop, hobby shop. You can shout out anyone you want to. I'm going to ask that you go ahead and talk about your Patreon one more time in the humble way that you did, that you presented. I'll go ahead and get started. Then we'll have John say his thank yous. And then Jim, as usual, will have you wrap it up. My thank yous today are actually going to go to John. Today. Usually I do a comic book shop or a brick and mortar store. But again, this the purpose of continuing conversations is actually to talk about the fans. As I've said before, Star Trek is here 55 years later because of the fans. We all know that that is fact, that is canon, that fans kept the show alive and brought it back. And I think likewise with fans like you, John, who breathe life with new ideas and innovation into the gaming environment, you're making it so much easier for other people to adopt this game. So I really want to give a strong thank you out to you, John, and keep it up in any way you want to support us. So go ahead and give your moment of gratitude, and please shamelessly plug yourself, or I will.
Okay. Well, I want to thank GMs and DMs like you guys for keeping the games running. I've done a GM session myself for one game, and it's very difficult to plan all these stories that you want to tell the players, and for you to keep it running for this long, it's amazing to me. And it attracts new players, and it attracts just random players like me to join your campaign and be part of the story. And of course, to suffer some of the tools and the boss you're using, hey, I can fix this. I can make it better.
Love it.
And thanks for providing the opportunity and sort of the pains of the growing pains of getting Majel to where she is. And I thank the community for being patient with the recent changes, the recent migration to the new version of Discord. And of course, if you want to support me, I have a Patreon. Just search for Majel, the Discord bot. Any amount that you can donate will be totally appreciated. You don't have to, but all every dollar, every penny is appreciated.
You call me and I'll come beta test anytime. Anything you need me to beta test, I owe you for that, John. And also, you always remember, a senior officer position on the USS Pioneer. Anytime you want to come back to the game, you're always welcome to do that too.
I appreciate it.
All right, Jim, take us out with your gratitude. And
my gratitude is, as always, it's got to go to the fans. I can't thank the fans enough for all the support that they give to the game, even just appreciating the game. But I mean, especially folks like John who go to the next level of fandom and love for the game and for Star Trek and for the property and all that stuff, and create these amazing tools just out of the love of it, and then make them available to other fans to use and to enjoy. It's just, like I said, I mean, I can't think of enough, right? Because it's such a great tool, and it makes the game easier for other people to get into. And that's totally what any game company would want. If we're not doing our job good enough, at least the fans are stepping up to kind of shore up the deficiencies in our world. Not that I would ever admit that necessarily, although I just did. So yeah, I mean, it's just amazing that you are willing to put your time and passion and effort to this for the love of it, right? I mean, I know I do that for plenty of other things, and I've done it in my past too for other games where I was just a raging fanboy. And I loved it so much. I just wanted to do more stuff and get into it. So just, thank you so much for everything you've done. And not just you, but I mean, especially you, because obviously you're the guest tonight. But for everybody else who's been creating apps or widgets or character sheets or ship sheets or references, or you're running games on Twitch or you're running games on YouTube and recording them for other people to enjoy. Even the game masters out there who have taken it upon themselves to run beginner games for new fans, they happen to see there's a bunch of people on Facebook who are saying oh, I want to join a game, and somebody steps up and says, oh, you know what, I'll run a beginner game for a couple hours next week. Sign in if you can and do it. And it's we're not asking them to do that; they're just doing that on their own. And I know, Michael, we've talked about this before, but I think that's the sign of a healthy game and a healthy fan base, where if the fans just take that ownership and they go running with it, I mean, that's just gold right there. And I know I've seen that twice that I can remember specifically, not for a role-playing game, but for collectible card games. When Decipher had the Star Trek collectible card game and they went defunct, the fans picked it up on their own and just created their own cards, created their own alternative rule sets, and kept that game alive. And I'm seeing it again right now with Android Netrunner. That was a great card game that Fantasy Flight picked up and produced for a while, and then they ended it. But the fans picked it up and they created their own internal governance committee and they're creating their own cards and their own decks, and they're doing their own conventions and stuff. And it's like, as a game company, you can't create that. You can't make that happen. That's the fans doing it. And so I again, long story short, thank you to the fans always.
Good. All right, everyone. And I'm going to be more shameless. Plug his Patreon.
Patreon. Yeah.
Patreon. I'm pronouncing it wrong.
Google search.
Majel bot. We just did all our
Majel the Discord bot
today. Exactly.
Majel bot. Patreon.
Majel the Discord bots. Maybe I'll do a song, like Guardians of the Galaxy level song for that. The Discord bot. Okay. Anyways, thank you, everyone. Again, another wonderful episode of Continuing Conversations. John, great to have you here. Jim, also. Remember, everyone, IDIC. Keep playing.
Live long and prosper. Be safe, be well. Thank you, John. Thank you, Michael. Have a great week.